let's get this started. Welcome everybody to the Drop Shot Code Jam. This week we're going to be confirming the missile mod buffs, looking at energy, and then talking about some Reddit comments. I guess to open things up, let's start with the missile buffs that kind of sat last week. It didn't seem like there were any real problems with the buffs after leading them up for a week. Does anybody have any final thoughts before these go in?
No, everything looks pretty good personally. I've always thought the missile mods were a little lacking, so everything looks good to me.
Yeah, I think they're fine as well.
Played around with taking away the 20% damage buff. How do you feel about that? How does everybody feel about that?
So far, it hasn't felt like super overpowered. I mean, it's a nice little perk for if you manage to kite correctly and whatnot. But as long as they're moving closer to you, or kind of popping back and forth, the little 20% doesn't really seem to make too much of a difference. Makes a huge difference in Bandits and Shack.
Personally, I think that's the 20% is a really cool mechanic, and if anything, if it's too strong, then I would rather see other things get nerfed, because the 20% actually give you a room to express more skill when you're playing.
Okay, yeah, that was, and especially with cluster missiles now getting a similar buff with bonus damage at those last two range ticks, it'll be interesting to see how those two mechanics play with each other.
Yeah, I think it's something to watch for the next couple of weeks going forward after the buffs are in place. But I haven't seen like any major issues with the initial buffs and the 20% damage bonus.
Okay.
I think missiles has been a front runner, and I think with the ballistic rework, I think it's just solidified itself as a front runner. So I guess maybe the question might be, what data can you pull for it in the last week about how many ballistic units have been dropped versus the change before? Because I think missiles are in a great spot, and I don't want to shift the conversation too much and keep it to the agenda, but I think maybe they're doing so well that might be a byproduct of pulling ballistics back a bit too much. I didn't know if that was going to be something we were going to discuss.
Yeah, I want to work through all of the weapons, and then once everything is settled, then we can pull hard numbers about what people are and aren't deploying. Because the missiles will go in this week with the final changes, then energy goes in, and once everything is kind of tweaked and most of it is buffed, looking at the energy changes, it looks like it's going to be another round of buffs for energy as well. I think then we can step back and say, all right, what are people deploying? Right. So it looks though, I guess those will go in this afternoon. The cluster missiles and missile pod will just need some new code for the bonus damage at max range. But the missile weapons on a whole already have the percent bonus, so it'll just hook into that bonus as well. So do you guys want to talk energy changes next, or I've got some updates about the map rewrite, and it's not terrific news, but it's just kind of, as I was going through the code, some stuff fell out of that, and so I figured this was a good place to talk about it. Where do you guys want to go from here? You guys want to talk energy, or you want to talk map rewrite?
Map code, because the energy is probably going to warrant a discussion. If you have an update on the map code that might be a little quicker than that, then I say go for that.
Okay, this might not be too quick, because this is okay. So there are two things in the when I was so lots of pieces have been really fully rewritten in the map rewrite. There were some issues with the map view code. Sorry, the kind of the code that checks what you can see and makes sure you're not attacking things that you can't see or interacting with things that you can't see. I spotted an issue with that and fixed it. What fell out of that was, I remember, and it came back to me where it came from, was I think in the first 6 months of the game, actually it was the week that relics were released, the first relic planet. I think it was Ramrod said that he captured a relic and then he wanted to continue to have vision of the relic that he captured after he left it, and just the relic would see for you. And I was like, oh, okay. So I just like threw a quick hack in and forgot about it. And when I went back to look at the code, that hack has just kind of grown like some kind of like some kind of tumor in a way. Like it just is really it started out as a hack and then stuff just worked in around it. I ended up pulling that code just so everything else was simplified. So really you can target what you and your faction mates can see, and that's it. There's a lot of we try to do a lot of conditional code, like oh, on some planets you can't see what your allies can see, and some planets you can see. I just got rid of all of that and just made the vision code standardized. Like you can see what you and your faction mates can see. Period. And that added a lot of sanity around the map viewer code. The drawback is a lot of side effects and kind of I think ways that relics have been used, like Dominus, for example, the capturing of nodes and each node giving you line of sight. All of that goes away now. You will see what your base sees and whatever any units see, but this can go. This is probably going to go two ways, but I wanted to kind of let you guys know which way the code was going and see what kind of discussion came out of that.
I don't really have a negative or a positive to not being able to see the nodes on Dominus. I've kind of thought, since we've talked about Dominus a few times, that it would be cool if you could send a unit over and you build up a node. So like you would get the ability to add vision to a node, or maybe add some sort of effect to a node. But I don't see it so much as a negative or a positive. Just you need to have a net out.
Okay, so it's not the absolute end of the world. It sounds like I maybe when this goes up on the in the game, people have some feedback about it. But removing that little hack of adding vision for relics and nodes really cleaned up the vision code and also allowed me to spot a bug that was causing vision to be recalculated in some cases when it didn't need to be, and that was slowing down the game. So it was nice to pull that out. The other was looking at task forces, and I realized the numbers just look really weird to me when I saw them all together. So we're currently Army of One has 2 task forces. Task Force Commander, I believe it's 5 task forces, and Supreme Commander is 7 task forces. And like, why does Task Force Commander, where the name is Task Force, not have the most task forces? Occurred like I don't know why that took 8 years to occur to me.
I'm so glad you said that.
So
you've been saying that for months.
so the code that drives task forces is in the map viewer because it basically links all those units behind the scenes for you so you can mass order them. So in the map rewrite, the way I rewrote it was just to make it 369. Army of One, 3 task forces, Supreme Commander, 6 task forces, Task Force Commander, 9 task forces. And that looked a lot cleaner. And now Task Force Commander is Task Force Commander.
Yeah,
I think the balance where the larger army you drop, you need more task force. So if you think task force commander not having the most task force is a problem, balance where I think it might be a better idea to just rename it to strike commander or something like that.
Yeah, well, but the way I want you to, if you're in terms of how you organize your army and fight with it, like the abilities, even the Hot King plays into like that ability. So if you're a commander, you're thinking at like the battalion level. Like your hotkeys are for 20 units a pop. Like you're moving giant groups of units back and forth. If you're a task force commander, you're more specialized. Maybe you've got like a quick reaction force. Maybe you've got some long range units. You've got more finesse to move that around. The thing this is fighting is, CE is always going to be probably one of the standout things. Like if you bring a bigger army, you're just going to be able to fight with more stuff, and that's going to be hard. It's going to be hard not to just say everybody gets the same CE. That's kind of just giving up. So the intent of this change is to dial it back a little bit for Supreme Commander, because yes, you get more units, but now you have to bunch them up a little more. and that means you're also probably going to be more vulnerable to things like being like a stack attack and kind of the more automated attacks that other people can throw at you. And now Task Force Commander lives up to its name.
Yeah, no,
Now the
I
thing is,
wholeheartedly agree. Task Force Commanders should have more than Supreme General.
I think you brought that up at the first Code Jam piece. Face, what were you saying?
so the issue is just with the number, right? So you said it will have 9 task force now. So normally the smallest task force, normally people run higher, but then split it up is 6. So 6 times 9 is already 54. So that's a really significant number for the current CE anyway. So that I still don't think the task force
You're still with us, Face?
Oh, sorry. I think my phone is acting up. What went through and what did not went through?
Oh, I think I knew. So you cut out, but I think what you were trying to say, if I'm wrong, let me know, is that, like, yes, this is a buff for Task Force Commander, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not much of a buff because based on the number of units deployed, like going from 5 to 9 isn't going to be a huge improvement. Is that the direction you're going in?
Yes, and at the same time, having 9 task force for a task force commander, like I like to think of the way that the task force is assigned is that it matches the ideal army size you're gonna drop. So a bigger dropper will obviously need to move more stuff. So just hanging on the balance there, I don't think it was an issue to begin with.
Yeah, I guess, but I guess it's not an issue, but I'm trying to make it an issue because the thing is, if you have a game about deploying armies and there's a specialization that lets you deploy more, that lets you bring more to the battlefield, that's just going to be overpowered in relation to everything else. And so for me, it's always been an experiment of, okay, like we want to make this a lever in the game, like being able to choose the size of your army. What are some interesting mechanics that we can put in around that so that just bringing more army isn't always the default choice? So this is another lever in that direction. I want to hamstring you, honestly, a little bit as Supreme Commander. I want you to have to work with larger army groups to kind of move things around. And the drawback of that is you're now vulnerable to a bit more automation from other people who can use things like stack attack and who have a little more ability to kind of finesse their attacks, whereas you're having to deal in bulk. So this is kind of like, I think I brought this up for every Code Jam, is this is kind of a weird way to do balance, and I'm just trying to like unravel this and see how far it goes. Now this isn't the final piece I want to do for Task Force Commander. I brought up a while back the idea of kind of building your own commands, where you would build a command that's actually a series of commands, and then you could issue that to a unit or to a group of units. And that, I think, if when that's ever written, is going to be kind of the final piece for Task Force Commander, but we're not quite there yet. So this is another sort of little incremental step that helps Task Force Commander really live up to its name. Like, they are the commander of task forces. They get all the task forces. And it's another step towards that last little piece of functionality I want to add for better automation of commands. And there's probably automation for Acties in there too, but both of those need the map rewrite before any of that can move forward, because it's really involved with how you play the game.
Just for the record, I have been playing Task Force Commander for a few weeks now, and I actually think it's a lot stronger than the other 3. So part of my concern is that it's already really strong, and it actually, I don't know if you know this, but it costs less than half the level point to max out versus the other 3 at the moment, because the cost got changed from 12 to 4 for the improved command a while back.
I brought those down. Okay. Well, maybe I should take a look at that and buff it back up. But the reason they were also brought down is because Task Force Commander was in such a weak place, because it felt like it was kind of missing a piece. And I think this was the exact comment that was made, was well, let's make their commands cheaper as kind of there's a lot of interim buffs going to Task Force Commander, because Army of One is definitely in one place where you're just deploying a couple of units, and you're relying on that the self salvage buff, and kind of maybe a buffed up commander as well. And at the same side, Supreme Commander is is just dropping big armies. So it's all in flux. I think that middle one with Task Force Commander, if somehow, once I'm pulling the numbers and all three are being used across different planets, then we're in good shape. Maybe we won't get there, maybe we will.
Yeah, so I think from my view, where I've only mainly been AO1, but looking at like how TFC and Supreme General or Commander or whatever it's called sort of work against each other, it's much easier to use AO1 and the passives that you get from having a huge army compared to like how sort of macro and micro intensive that TFC can actually get into. We're trying to issue like all of the new commands to like improve moved out, upload terrain data, etc. to multiple units at a time. So I think it does have a lot of power, but it's much more nuanced to actually get that power out. And like adding things like being able to do like stack commands, etc., will bring that sort of baseline utility of TFC up, and then you could actually look at like adjusting other things.
Okay. Yeah, I think once there's a platform where we can kind of really start modifying a lot of the pieces of the commander specializations, then more is going to open up. So these are sort of band-aids in the meantime as we're kind of moving in that direction.
Yeah, because it's never really made sense to me that like you get all of these really cool commands, but you have to try and organize your army, and then you're also trying to do like improve move out and upload terrain data to like 12 units a turn. Gets really intensive, and you end up losing a lot of time of strategizing purely for doing those. So like if we do manage to get like that commands into small stacks of Task Force Commander, I think you can then look at like buffing or nerfing it in other ways as well to sort of bring it up to giving it a smaller skill ceiling, but bringing up like the skill floor a little bit to normalize it compared to AO1 and Supreme General.
Yeah, maybe we've got something with maybe there's auto commands that you can turn on and off. So if you get into a fight, you just sort of flip a set of commands that then are automatically firing on certain units every turn for you. And then you're more focused on the battle and less focused on the click managing of like, okay, I've got to hotwire this, and I've got to improve the shields on that, and I've got to give this a 2-hit, and that way your focus is really, okay, this needs to move here and attack that, and these guys are coming in. So you're more thinking about the battle versus the accounting of your army.
Yeah, I think that'd be really good. Being able to auto issue commands would be really, really good and help out the tree a lot.
Yep. Okay, and then I mean it all needs to flow from having a map viewer that can actually be expanded versus what we have right now. Okay, that covers the main 2 points of the map rewrite. Cool. I'm glad that wasn't a big pain point. So we already talked about the missile buff. We're going to talk energy this week. So the current energy damage buff is at 0 range, a 50% damage bonus, and then it scales by 10% for every square. So it's 1 range 40%, 2 range 30%, etc., etc. I thought about tweaking that with the changes to energy, but it feels like energy has always been in a pretty good place. Like, effectively, if you get up close to an energy weapon, you get punished. You get punished really, really hard. And that mechanic seemed to work really well. You have to kind of, when you're building an energy unit, you're thinking about recharge and how often the weapon's going to be firing. Obviously, you're trying for that 1 recharge, the weapon's shooting every turn, and you're not worrying about it. And now you've got a couple of levers to do that, especially with the Spellbreaker and commands. So let me post the changes I want to make to the mods. It was the same. It kind of turned into the same thing with missile weapons. There were a lot of energy mods out there that were getting no love just because they had too many drawbacks for what they were trying to do. So I took a lot of that out and really just tried to make them, hey, you're using a mod slot, you should get something cool for that. So let me post this in chat and we can kind of see where it goes. All right, everyone see that? So the highlights are, the Burster was always in kind of a weird place, so I decided to do something even weirder with it. The Burster is now 2 guns instead of 1, but unlike the other 2 guns, now the 2 guns are actually going to be 2 different guns. So it's a plus that you're getting 2 weapons, but now you have to manage this kind of weirdness of the 2 different guns that it has. It's kooky, but maybe it'll find some love. And then pretty much everything that modified attacks was buffed because it seemed like there were, aside from the Evercell, the -1 recharge, or the Hyperbat, sorry, nothing, no energy mods really got use except in really specialized circumstances. So I tried to up the buffs, cut the nerfs on the mods, just because they are eating up a mod slot and they should be giving you a lot more for what they're doing. So Argus was -2 recharge, -4 damage, -1 range. That's a lot of minuses for just that -2 recharge. So I changed that. It's now -2 recharge, which is huge, but you are losing 1 range out of that. So you can make that up, and there's a lot of ways you can get recharge now as well. So that, I think years ago I would have thought that was a huge buff to energy. Now that we've had enough things that give recharge, that doesn't feel like quite as big of a buff. The Calypso, same thing. It was this weird kind of trade-off of range and damage, and it wasn't working. Energy is really about recharge. This is also a recharge buffer. The unit gets +1 charge if it didn't move last turn. So it's a weaker version of the Hyperbat, but it's another way of getting recharge. Maybe that could be 2 recharge if the unit didn't move last turn. That probably is. We can discuss that. Deathlance got a small damage buff, going from 25 damage to 30. EMP Adapter, we've done this across the board. The 150 shield damage is going to 175 shield damage. And then the Kippers was -4 damage, +1 range, is now just straight up +1 range. The Palace was +3 damage. Definitely not doing a whole lot for you, so that's been knocked up to +6 damage. So if you're running 4 guns, that's an extra 24 damage, and especially if you throw maybe you throw a Burster on there, you're looking at +36 damage on your energy weapons. The Venom it was a weird 28 damage. It got knocked up to 30, and that's pretty much it. Pretty basically just buffing the unused mods and then doing a little tweak with the Burster to make it more interesting. I think with the Calypso, maybe we go to +2 charge if the unit didn't move last turn, because otherwise it's just a weaker version of the Hyperbat. What do you guys think?
The Calypso might not be bad to leave as a weaker version of Hyperbat. I think pretty sure it's a simple mod. So if we're gonna,
Calypso's intermediate.
is it intermediate? Okay, my bad.
Yeah, and not moving is pretty much going to put it in the PvE arena, or maybe a very specialized base defender. But PvP, like, you don't have a choice whether or not you're moving. Sometimes you just have to move, and then that's a wasted mod slot for you.
Yeah, no, agreed.
Okay, we'll make that +2 charge if the unit didn't move last turn then.
I think the Venom could still get buffed, because there's absolutely no reason to ever use it over a Deathlance at 4 recharge.
Yeah, 2 range, 4 recharge. The Deathlance is vastly superior.
Maybe we go the other way with it then. Maybe we make, because there's no 5 range energy weapon, and the Venom it keeps trying to be like a mini Deathlance, and it just has never worked. What if we flip that on its head and we give it 5 range? What kind of stats we want to shake out of that?
I think that would be conflicting territory with the Uplate, which has 5 range and similar damage and stat.
Sorry,
and that would be really similar to the Obliterator cannon right now, which in of itself is another problematic mod.
The Obliterator is unique, so you're not really going to see a whole bunch of them on the battlefield.
They are not.
They're not unique,
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
not unique. You can deploy as many as you want.
but they're. I mean, they have 6 range, but you can't hit anything past 8 or 9 range unless you're sitting still with an AOA or in a tracking base, and like all sorts of weird factors since energy has such a negative to hit.
I'm just referring to the base range of 5, which if Fritz wanna make it like another 5 range for recharge, we already have something that's really, really similar to that, and it's gonna, you know, conflict
I would
between the two.
lower the charge and the damage. So the obliterator is really about getting to that 6 range, and then I don't the kind of the EMP damage when you lose your unit is I'd rather make something that's sort of a mini obliterator than trying to make a mini Deathlands, because and all energy weapons are basically trying to be the Deathlands. I feel, at least.
Would you be opposed to potentially bringing in Leech, because the Leech and the Vamp are the only effects that have that? So would you be interested in bringing a third, an alternative to the Vampire Cannon?
Like something that also has the vampire effect, or
Yeah, something like that where it can overshield you, because it'd be nice to have an alternative to that. I don't know, what everyone thinks anyway.
Well, it's called the Venom energy turret. Maybe look at sort of having like a dissolve factor, like a mini Wraith Hunter.
so like an acid effect.
Yeah, just like a smaller acid effect, where maybe it lowers armor repair itself or something.
I think having the same amount of acid would not make it overpowered, because the Wraith Hunter is AoE, right? The Venom could just be the same amount except to a single target.
Yeah, I don't think that
The
would be.
Venom is also a pretty cheap mod to make though, so we gotta take that into account as well.
The 2 range really bottlenecks it into its own little spot, though, to where you're either using Eagle Eye and using it only on a plus range unit with another plus range mod in order to get out to 4 or 5, and then you're only hitting in that situation up to 5 range, because anything moving over outside of your range, you're not hitting with energy typically. Like unless you're full command spamming and brought the whole army with you to add instant to hits.
I like the idea that was posted in chat where anything hit by the Venom doesn't regenerate armor.
Yeah, it doesn't. It loses its armor regen.
Yeah, I think if it had like a debuff for 2 turns or something like that, if it's sort of to make up for the fact it's a 4 recharge weapon, you're not typically going to get it to 1 recharge without sacrificing damage elsewhere, because every other mod is 3 recharge. I think that could actually sort of put it in a right place where you'd want to pick it versus certain army comps, because you're not technically getting more damage out of it, but you're negating regeneration, which is in turn damage.
So maybe we cut the damage. I mean, the damage is, you're not really taking this for the damage anymore. You're taking it to prevent armor regeneration. So we cut the damage to like 15. I mean, it's different then, right? Maybe we go 3, 12, 3 range, 12 damage, 3 recharge, and then units hit do not repair armor this turn.
I really like the concept of this, but my concern is, even if we add it, to be frank, will it be picked? Because most PvP goes for one shot. So the first kind of turn is to check the region of anything, or if they've got a defense 2 mod, and then you multiply your attack accordingly. So I feel like this is like the mag cannon. The reason why the mag cannon effect hasn't been added to a proper strategy to a full wide army is because you don't want to be taking them down over 3 turns. You want to be one tapping them. So my only concern is, I do love the idea of it and the creativity, but I just don't think it will get placed. I could be completely wrong. That's just my opinion, but it feels to me that it's a really cool idea, but it might not find its place, because I'd rather take an extra if I'm putting on a Supernova, I'd rather take a Punisher, which would give me 50 damage rather than this.
Knock somebody out, then have them not heal next turn. I mean, that's a good point.
And Nicias, like you said, you typically don't kill BAs or even BA2 to BA3s in one turn.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, but they don't have no one builds them for armor repair. The Steel Tech bot and droid don't get used, and armorer gives you a handful of armor per turn. So I think unless we really look at how mods can give you, or some benefit that can give you armor repair for us to create a mod to counter, if that makes sense, then I don't.
Well,
I just feel like we could use it somewhere else.
Oh,
Battle
you know,
Axe 10. Battle Axe 10 gives you 25 AoE armor regen per turn.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Sorry, that's a good point.
you know, I don't think we have a. Do we have a condensed neutronium equivalent on the energy side?
No.
No,
Maybe that's the Venom, is that it ignores the percent damage reduction.
I mean, not to kind of take a step back, but maybe no, that's probably a good idea.
Ignoring damage reduction is actually pretty. Yeah, it would be pretty good for counter pick. Yeah.
The only thing is, this is one gun, and the other ones have been mods.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe taking the step back and using that as the Calypso buff. Is that using the Calypso Prism, you are penetrating through. You're using that prism of light to get through that whatever they're hitting you with or whatever they're defending with.
Yeah, because honestly, like the additional recharge is sort of that. I feel like that's a mechanic I've used a little too much lately. I like the idea of making the Calypso kind of the condensed neutronium mod for energy. So let's do that instead. We'll do the Calypso as ignores percent damage reduction.
Yeah, I think the Venom as either as a mini Wraith Hunter or something to negate armor repair on a unit is not a bad idea. It would also maybe bring it into like when we get back to 1v1 fighting and stuff, people who drop just big tanky meaty units like maybe a Toon BA1 or something along those lines, or a Behemoth being able to stop armor repair, maybe it even negates Acti armor repair. So like the BA3 or the Behemoth or Leopards, the Venom would disable any armor repair that would be gained by an Acti also.
So
Yeah,
what
I
if
think that's a good idea.
the Venom is a really mini Wraith Hunter then, like 2 points of armor damage? But it means then, I mean, you could have a whole army running these things with a lot of armor dissolve if you're hitting with all of them.
Ooh.
I don't think armor dissolve is that big of a problem, honestly.
I don't know I'm willing to
Don't
test
stack
those.
BA3.
Yeah, I'm willing to test those waters, but we'll see. That could be really strong.
I say do it, and if it's overpowered, then we can tune it back. But
You can do
I don't see it being a problem, and kind of being a cool mechanic for an underused energy mod.
Yeah, no,
Especially
I'm
with
down
four
for it.
retard, it's not gonna be
I
that much
like
worse.
that too because it's Venom. You've poisoned a shitload of units. They're just staying poisoned and it's getting worse and worse and worse.
It is going to be a commonly available AoE weapon, so we'll see how this goes. Let's take a look at the stats on it and see how ridiculous this is going to be.
The only time I ever see it being a factor is if you're stacking armor units.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah,
Like that dissolve, even on Shack, isn't that big of a deal unless I have a giant stack of like 50 BA, and that's 10 times, 20 times the amount of what we're gonna give the Venom.
yeah. And I want you to get punished if you're just like you've got your giant stack and you're trying to just bully around the battlefield with that.
If you run around in a giant stack, you're the one that's gonna get bullied, though.
I like it. It used to not be that way at all.
a lot of mechanics went in to try to get rid of Stack Wars. All right, so it's two. So that let's kind of tweak around these stats. 4 recharge doesn't make any sense anymore. The Vertigo is 391. So probably something around so 3 range, something around like 10 damage, or maybe 312 3, because it's the acid effect that's doing all the work for you.
Would you be interested in playing? Oh, sorry, you go, Alexander.
Oh, no, nothing. I'm just saying that sounds correct.
Would you be interested in maybe playing with the overload capacitator code and maybe having it where it has a hard limit of 3 range, so that then in turn means you can't kind of chuck AOA on it and sit in a base quite far back and kind of melt people. So you have to commit to getting close to them. Something like a 3 or 4 range cap limit would be quite good to force you to kind of engage.
The overload? Well, what are you
So
using that's getting
you
even 3 range?
Sorry, so what I'm saying is if we make the turret whatever range it is and it doesn't go above that, so if it's 3 range it can't go above, so we just take the code from the OC and just make it where it has a hard limit.
Oh, cap its range?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't explain it well enough. Yeah, cap its range, so then it stops you from making it hit at 8 to 10 range, because ballistics are going to struggle to get to that, and if you're melting people past their range that they can reach, it's going to be quite difficult. I'm talking very specifically in base defense when energy is preferred. Just 2 cents there.
Yeah, that's true, because then you have this kind of, if you can get this thing to 10 range, and then, well, why don't we just have it go into effect if you hit within because there's that range number is like the optimal range, which for energy, if you've got a 5 range energy, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is optimal, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is not optimal, and it's reversed for missile. So why don't we just say that if you're hitting for acid, you have to hit at the optimal, which is the 1, 2, 3, the first set of those numbers, to get the acid effect to go off, and then we can even buff the Shakar acid effects too, which I'm excited about.
No, thank you.
We're not.
Yeah,
No.
I think they're in an awesome place right now. They need to stay right where they're at.
I'm already tired with having to spam nano boost all day.
Yeah, you would say that dog after you've killed over 120 queens. Bit unfair for the rest of us.
Yeah, dog needs to open a school on how to tame Shaq.
Yeah, I think they're in an awesome place. They should stay right where they're at. Just nerf dog by making his spawns like triple or double size. That's all.
So we're gonna make the Venom a mini Wraith Hunter. All right, and the Vertigo is just kind of in a weird spot because it's sort of that one. It's 3 range, 9 damage, 1 recharge. It's kind of like a buffed up simple.
And you say, is there anybody that can say they use the Vertigo?
It deals less damage and have less range than like the Crusader.
Yeah, it has a cool name. I mean, I like the Vertigo. I mean, maybe the name indicates that it should lower speed when it hits.
I think you could just drop its range and pull its damage up to probably 20 or something, because then it would kind of be like a single turret version of the Punisher.
But is there ever a time you'd be taking that over a Deathlance? I guess if you had an intermediate unit, you didn't want to stick a advanced mod on it.
Yeah, and sometimes having an extra high damage mod actually is really useful too.
Like I say, sometimes I just like to put 6 weapon mods on things and just let it fly into the field.
Run it at the commander and hope for the best.
So we'll make it like a mini Deathlance. So like what 3 18 3.
Also, just might be overpowered idea, but energy does not have the Trigun Triad equivalent, so maybe we can get some idea from that sculpt out into the energy as well.
Yeah, that was kind of intentional. I wanted energy to not really have a lot of multi-weapon mods. Um, the idea was that pretty much every energy weapon is just really is punching as hard as it can.
Frizz, I know we brought it up in another code jam, but Core Clark has mentioned it again. Would there be a way to increase damage if you say you had 3 recharge and you had E variant and then hyperbat and then you used the spellbreaker? You could get an additional damage if you kind of over recharge, like almost go below 1 recharge. It will still show as 1 for 1, but you kind of get like a bonus benefit for pushing the extra recharge, because some of the new changes are going to, for example, if I'm going to run Argus Energy Adapter, if there was a residual benefit of say 5 or 10% extra damage, if I knew I could over recharge, if that makes sense, that could be something that could be quite interesting.
I do like that. The code does track like the exact charge amount, so I can determine if you've overcharged. It's currently obviously throwing that all away. What's the overall thought on that?
I mean,
I think it'd be fine if you added like +4 or +5 damage for every extra charge you weren't using.
I was gonna say maybe do like the opposite of missiles, to where if you have double whatever the recharge is, like you're charging more than double whatever your recharge is every turn, you get like a 10 or a 20% flat bonus.
I think percentages are cleaner, Molt, just to work on, because then you don't just run low damage and just kind of eat back the recharge. I think percentages might be easier to work with. But yeah, like what PK said, maybe run it 5 to 10%. And then there could be an incentive to run energy where you just completely, you run a spellbreaker with Argus, and then Calypso if we give it an extra charge, and you can get your damage from overcharging rather than just flat damage.
We already have the percent damage by range. I think it makes sense to then have additional percent. So if you're at 1 range, you're doing 40% bonus damage, and then if you're 2 overcharged, you got another 20% bonus damage on top of that. So like 10% per charge.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm already thinking of
PK's getting a little
from...
back of it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sulfur, go ahead.
Let's test that for a week.
Yeah, I'm already seeing like the absolute PTSD from like accidentally going into range of like base defense clops with minus recharge, like 40% bonus because you're in their range, and then an extra 20% from their recharge and just blowing you up in one shot.
Can we please make sure that this doesn't apply to katanas? Because I know exactly what PK wants to do, and I don't like it.
Oh no! See, I'm thinking Gladys.
Come on, I just had that idea.
I'm thinking of Gladys, like an army of Gladys LEs with a spellbreaker, hyperbat, like just all of it.
5% per extra charge, capped at 20%. So that means to get that nice juicy 20%, you're going to have to get 4 overcharge per turn.
I think that's nice.
10, but cap it at 20 anyway. So it makes it easier to reach, but you also cap the damage.
I'm liking this mechanic. Let's put it in to talk about this week. But this seems like it's going to, like just like we did with Missile, I feel like that giving that little tweak at the top of its range really helped define how the weapon should be used. Here, this like recharge was always kind of something that once you fixed, you didn't think about. But I like this recharge piece because now it brings it back into play with the weapon, and now it's part of what you're thinking about with the weapon again.
Yeah, because it's always been too easy to just completely overcap on energy and not get any bonus from it. So I do like I like the added 10%, 15%, or whatever as well.
Yeah, I'm 100% down for this. We'll test the waters with it.
PK, keep your testing away from me this week, please. Thank you.
I mean, I was just thinking it's time to get Rachako to start doing some army fights. So we'll teach him how to use energy right off the bat with like quadruple recharge rates.
Deep end, just jump him in.
And here you go. Here's 40 Spellbreakers. 500 Supernovas. I want you to deploy to Dom and just stay down there forever.
Yeah, let's see what that katana looks like with this.
Well, I can tell you exactly what it looked like. Against a Shack, using all damage bonus mods at 0 range, and a DEX katana, I can get the main guns to hit for 96 each. So they'll hit for like 115 each against Shack.
Which Shack?
I haven't seen a lot of katana against Shaq though, so
Well, I won't give away my secret, but I think they're incredibly OP versus Shack. One turn. And then they're useless.
all right. Yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff in this game. I think sometimes I really like this idea. It sounds like generally the concern is just like it's going to make energy maybe a little too ridiculous. But yeah, let's put it in the notes. Let's see what people say, and if everyone likes it, after it sits for a week, let's do it.
Frizz, just a quick one regarding when we're comparing mods, we're comparing it to Deathlance a lot. Do you feel that the Deathlance needs a buff? I'm an energy lover, and I would say it's fine with your, you know what you can get. It's 25 damage. You chuck it on a Bright Lance with Evair. It's one recharge. It's pretty out of the box, ready to go. You know what you get. I don't feel like it needs to go to 30. I think that could be, especially because we compare it as a benchmark against every other mod. I would be happy with keeping it the same. What's everyone else's thought?
Yeah, I think the same, because if you're buffing it to 30, you're essentially putting it into Wraith Hunter damage territory. Like, it could stay at 25. It's already probably the most used energy mod in the game.
I just don't want us creating these great, 6 different great units, and then a simple damage increase just still puts the Death Lance as the go-to unit. It's not fun when we have to use it. Well, it's fun because it blows shit up, but it's fun to customize more.
I mean, I think the Punisher's probably the most used energy mod in the game. It's what you get bang for buck is 10 times better than the Death Lance is. 2 weapons, especially when you include a D variant and Berserker, you're way over the damage of what a Death Lance gets you. And then when you include the actual percentiles and extra damage bonuses, it's just massive the difference between a Punisher and a Death Lance. I don't think 30 is super overpowered, especially since it has 1 extra recharge over the Punisher. But that's just my opinion.
Okay, actually, so this kind of discussion I like because it means some people think one thing is better, some people think another thing is better. That means I think we're in a good place. So that says to me that we should leave the Death Lance where it is. Looks like the focus is going to be more around the energy mods, and then the Venom and the Vertigo, which really never saw much use. Those will be where maybe we do some work because they're just sort of throwaway mods right now. All right, let me post the new changes, and we can see if everyone thinks those look good.
Oh, just a side question, because now that we're buffing some Sabot and EMP, so what about units and mod that kind of have that effect built in, but not up to the new percentage value? For example, the Scout Sniper still has the damage at 150% versus, the new buff value of 175.
Well, the Scout Sniper, yeah, Dog said it's not Sabo, it's Snipe Effect. It just does the extra 50% 2 armor.
Yeah, and I think I brought that up when Code Jam or 2 ago when we talked about messing with the Scout Sniper. We talked about the buff to it, and it already is pretty good at melting units. Um, and especially now that you can add long rifles to it and make little snipe teams, I'd be hesitant to throw another buff at it when it's already that approach is the ability to snipe in the game has already gotten a nice nudge to make it more viable.
Frizz, why did you leave Leech and Vamp off? Do you feel like they're in a? Does data suggest they're in a good spot at the moment, or are they just going to be a round to look at? Because I think the Leech could get some love.
I think the Leech is just the weaker version of the Vampire, right?
Yeah. I think maybe you could play with the percent of overshield, maybe. So like the Leech could be something could be used as a something that's a bit weaker rather than just flat damage. But I don't know. I run Vamp over Deathlance most of the time just because energy hits first, and 9 times out of 10 it will hit shields and give you extra HP. Maybe that could. Do you think that would sit? Should we wait and see where that sits with all these changes, or do you think there's something to look at there now?
I'd have to agree. I take a Vamp over Deathlance typically. Vamp's just way more beneficial. Vamp Punisher is my typical energy go-to.
If the vampire effect was a mod that you could apply to all your energy weapons, that would just be ridiculous, wouldn't it?
Yes, that'd be absolutely crazy.
Yeah, that would like 200 shield regen charge.
Overcharging your supernova by 500 shields and never dying.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just start using it on like Gatlingers or something. You know, just like all my Gatlingers have Death Lance and Vamp effect.
Yeah, and the Vamp is, I mean, that 323 with the Vampire is, yeah, why would you pretty much want to, you would take that over a Death Lance right now because you're 5 damage off the Death Lance, but you're getting the overshield out of it.
Doesn't Vamp do less damage to armor, though?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
It does have that damage reduction to armor. Okay. You know what? It does. It feels like that hit a pretty good place with balance. Yeah, I'd be hesitant to mess with it because I feel like we hit a good spot and balance with Vamp, and adding another of that style of weapon, it's already a nice to have with the overshield because like you shoot someone and you know when you get shot, basically they're going through the damage you did to them first, which is nice. All right.
We need an armor version to where I leech your armor, like a nanite shot. They just rip off little shreds and bring it back to me.
So like a really big
maybe if we ever do the final expansion for Drop Shock, we'll have a vampire effect for ballistic weapons.
Nanite Wars.
Oh boy, the cringe.
I'm just having
Okay,
flashback about League tank fight, so all that lifesteal.
Okay, so we're coming up on the hour. That is pretty much everything. So we talked about missile changes. We did an update on where the map viewer is at. Went through energy. I really like this new energy overcharge mechanic. It does feel like it was sort of a missing piece to energy, and just like the missile updates going in, I'm really curious to see how these play.
We have to buff all energy units by 2 controlled speed also.
Why is that?
They're very hard to mod to also be in and out fighters unless you take steady hand or you use 1 to 2 extra mods. Yeah, I knew Dog would say no. I was waiting for Slay to chime in too.
You have no idea. I was about to say something. I saw him type. I was like, I'll let him handle it.
Yeah. I knew it was coming. I was I do have one suggestion. If we take the always zero off of Cyclops, though, that just makes them completely useless for anything outside of base defense. And they're such a potentially good mecha. They just have one niche that they're good for, and that's so annoying.
It's weird. I was going to suggest that Cyclops become elite, and we buff them up a little bit, and then they are what the Gat and the Wyvern are, because we don't have an elite energy
Yeah,
unit.
I'm cool with them going elite and not being able to use the PUs on them, but the always zero control is just makes them good for one thing only.
They get deployed a lot. I mean, you see them in PvE, you see them in PvP. I mean, they do have a very defined role.
Yeah, not moving.
Yeah, I think you could buff them up to elite and then give them remove the controlled speed nerf they have against them.
I'd rather see a new unit, a new elite energy unit, because the Cyclops is just it's so defined in what it does, and I'd hate to mess with that and break it.
All right, let's make the Wolfhound elite. I think we're all in agreement.
That was clearly what I was trying to say.
Well,
All right.
that's all my ideas.
Okay, so I think we're closing thoughts here. Anybody? I did go through the Reddit comments. I replied to the ones that I was working on, or the ones that I think we had on the roadmap. Let me do another quick scan to make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, there was that. Now this jumped out at me, was the idea for the heavy ballistic turret. I think a couple people have said this, giving its weapon the mag effect.
I'm not opposed.
I think that's really good. Feedback I've had from... Sorry, PK, go. I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
From a couple of AO1ers that have tried to shack, they've had quite a lot of resistance in terms of shacking. Maybe they haven't yet worked out kind of the CE efficient units to use, but I would like to see where there'd be a way where AO1ers can use their commanders to kind of fight shack, and maybe SSMs getting deployable mag cannons would really help with tearing down that 4v1. You've got to kind of dodge a bit. I think that could work really well. Because there wouldn't be much of a benefit in terms of the PvP mechanic, but definitely from a PvE perspective, I think that could see AO1ers be more comfortable dropping 1 to 5 units to kind of fight shack.
I was thinking maybe across the board is what I was gonna chime in with there. The advanced tier, or I think they're actually intermediates, but the higher end of the basic turrets, or I mean the heavy turrets, gets an effect based type. Because there's no reason to ever use them at this point in the game. I mean, other than the fact that we can't go shack for more buildings right now, or we're limited to bandit bases, but there's zero reason to ever use any of the standard buildings as far as turrets go. And it also maybe add a little bit more of an element to bandit nodes when you go to capture them if they were a little bit stronger in some way.
Yeah, Frizz, there's only roadmap on giving the human tech some love, because shack was just, unless we put a hard limit on the amount of shack, and maybe there's a whole base rework in the mix or conversation we need to have, but maybe when we wanted to look at human tech and giving it some love, because the hybrid was a nice look into what we could do to create like a third option with a great effect and great drawback to it. Maybe we could look at buffing some human stuff.
Yeah. Sorry, I was reading chat. Buffing some which stuff again?
Buffing what exactly what Core said. So buffing the human kind of tech, so the turrets, the heavy turrets, the super power plants, stuff like that. So just nice to have I put something on Reddit about when you said about the Dreadnought being the thing 2 weeks ago. The Dreadnought was the only thing you dropped, and now we've had a wealth of variety on commander units. I feel like that could be a thing we could do for bases as well. The Shack Gens and the Reactor combo and the Heavy Phase and the 6 support is just your go-to. So I think we could look at a big base conversation, and there's loads of kind of suggestions that the community have put together, and maybe we could start looking at tackling that. And this could be part of it, having human tech as a way to, as an option against shack tech.
I like that too. I think Core's posting about like missile turrets could be web turrets as well. So I think it's definitely worth a pass of looking at kind of this underused items and seeing if there's ways that we can kind of put little buffs on them to maybe bring them back into play.
Speaking of shack bases, PK, we got a good vote in about shack bases being back on Hades. Is the code in place for you to turn on the old shack bases fridge, or have you torn it apart, making this weird, huge 17 quadrant base that you dropped last time?
Yeah, that kind of broke stuff. I wish I could turn it back. When I turned it on, you guys kind of saw how amazingly terrible it was when I turned that code on. Like, it was really cool seeing 7 shack bases all come down on the planet, and then I think it spawned about 150 Shakar as well, so it turned into this enormous battle. Unfortunately, the rest of the mechanics weren't. So that setup is really cool. The code is there to spawn all that stuff, but when the game actually tried to control that and make that fight interesting for you guys, it just really struggled. So there's little things I need to do in terms of how the shacks spawn and how they treat their base, and that should make that battle more interesting. But unfortunately, that means that some work needs to happen before I can flip the switch and turn shack base spawning back on.
I like what Dog and Nicias and everybody's kind of in the chat now with. When the shack deploy to Kanu, maybe they deploy a little mini base with them. That would give us the opportunity to collect some shack buildings, since we don't really have a solid method at the moment for that. And it would also give them a little bit of a buff, stationary buff on Kanu as well.
I kind of, so you guys are gonna hate me, but I like that there's this run on Shakar buildings and they're hard to get. And I definitely like the frequency I'm getting pinged about, like, hey man, you got any of those shack buildings? Is picking up. Obviously, there are some factions that just have a bazillion buildings, and it's never going to be a problem. I if it was long term, if I had no plans for getting Shakar buildings back in the game, I'd be like, yeah, let's just figure out a way to throw a couple in and we'll be fine. But I really want Shakar buildings to be an event. Like, the Shakar come down in mass with this giant base, and now you've got to deal with them. But the cool part is you're going to get a ton of Shakar buildings, kind of like a fishing season or something like that. Like, it's dead, and suddenly, oh, they showed up. Let's go get our buildings. That's really that's the trajectory I'm shooting for with that.
Well, this Fisher's gonna have to sell his boat soon because he ain't getting shit to eat.
It's hard times on this edition of Shakar Deadliest Catch.
It's rough, let me tell you. Brother struggling out here.
Okay, so the other someone had posted about another way to modify CE for simple and intermediate units, and I was like, hey, hasty construction's a thing, because like, who has used that mod ever? And I looked at it, and it's got so many negatives. I thought maybe buff it a little bit. Yeah, hasty. It's awful. So I want to turn hasty construction into just -1 max speed, and then a 0.85 CE after that.
That's a bit too similar to Power Plant Restrictor. I quite like with Hasty where you lost some of the core stats, made it a little bit weaker. But yeah, maybe we could. I don't want to make them too similar, and then you just kind of chuck them on to lose speed as the only downside. Maybe it could be
10% armor and shields, and then
yeah.
Oh yeah, you're right. I basically just made a slightly better version of Power Plant Restrictors. Okay, why don't we take Power Plant to 0.85 and then Hasty. Let me pull Hasty back up. So why don't we make them both 0.85 and then face? Why? we'll make them both 0.85 CE, and maybe we remove the speed debuff on hasty construction.
Sounds pliable.
All right. Anybody have anything else as we're closing out?
Swarm on Dominus. Oh, that was a cough. Sorry.
Why you gotta make it's like no, it's the same issue. Is the wait, you want the bandit swarm or the shack swarm? Are you just trying to are you making your own things up at this point?
No, I said it wrong while coughing. And the it'd be cool to have the bandit swarm back on Dom, because we had a conversation about it in all chat. Whilst we're obviously everyone has their gripes with Dominus, and it kind of being at the moment it's kind of now we split it up and you kind of share the unknown as a resource management planet. And I guess if your consensus is to kind of just hold fire while you make something, we can kind of keep doing that and just splitting it up. But I think the swarm could just add that extra unknown quantity that could create an interesting reason to drop. But if it's in pieces, then that's fine, and we know for certain that it can never be dropped with the code state that it's in. But if it's there and we can flick it on, it could be nice for people to kind of have fun with the swarm.
Unfortunately, when I started working on the spawn code, the very first thing I broke was the swarm code. And the swarm code was some of the easiest pieces because all it does is it grabs a bunch of specialized bandit units and makes them really, really good. It flips a flag on the planet so that all bandits that spawn are really, really tough. And then it just kind of goes to town. Let me take a look at that and see if there's a way I can jury rig something back together so at least it's a little more interesting for the time being. Yeah, that's kind of all I can offer in that department.
How's the event window and a pop-up coming? Great news.
I was just thinking about that. So the map rewrite needs to happen first, and once that happens, then all kinds of other quality of life map improvements can happen. It's tough to work on right now because I even doing just a little tweak on the map viewer is so much of it's getting thrown away, and I already have so little time to work on this in the first place. It's tough to write something knowing, oh, I'm going to toss. I mean, this hour that this hour, this 30 minutes or an hour I'm going to spend is completely wasted because once I do this rewrite, all this code is getting tossed anyway.
I got you. Okay, I was just curious where we were standing on that. And I know most of the flags are already there for organizing the off-planet event logs or combat reports. So maybe in the rewrite for that, we have 2 or 3 different selections at the top of our event window for like PvP info, salvage info, mining info, all info. That way you can kind of get a little bit more detailed report of what's going on the planet. Just a suggestion down the road.
At some point, that has to be completely rewritten because I think I said in one of the first or second code jams that the events right now are this terrible mashup of HTML and XML. I'm sorry. I wish like past me would apologize to future me for doing it that way because it's the whole thing. There are so many little places that code is used, and it's all hardwired. Like when the message goes in, it goes in this super funky format, and it's not good funky, unfortunately. So in order to actually make that usable and put useful things around it, like hey, I want to filter by mining messages, the whole system has to be ripped out and redone.
Sounds
Although
good.
let me get right on that. Just kidding. Yeah, I did a hack to it, and I had to like write a wrapper function just to capture the message and then put some extra information around it. Maybe I don't know.
It's
Maybe
not
I
a
can
mumble
use
wrapper,
that
is it?
approach and not. It's the best kind of, yes. Everything in the game is just all bubble wrap, at least at this point. But it's maybe that's an approach. Maybe I can just kind of hack what I already put on it and put some metadata in there, because a lot of things in the game need metadata. Like it would be great if mods and units had metadata, so you could filter by like the weapons they had or what they did. It would be great if the turn log had metadata. Um, so yeah, it's just another. I mean, the quality of life thread probably is an encyclopedia at this point. There's just so many little quality of life things we need.
I mean, I have to hard agree on that one. But we'll get
Okay. Has anyone? So X Hunter posted his scripts, I think this last week. Has anybody who hasn't used them before tried them out? Iron was demoing them to me, and I was pretty impressed with what he put together.
Yeah, they're really good. Dog introduced me to them, or told me about them a while back. And the best one for me is the grids. I didn't realize. I always just kind of, when you interact with something over and over, you kind of don't notice the hiccups and the speed bumps that can be improved. So then when you just added a grid format to everything, it just kind of made it so much easier to kind of navigate. And then you've got specific lines that help you follow, and guidelines when you're looking to scan for relics and maximize visibility. So the extra grids is amazing. The better storage is nice as well, and the army viewer is good. My only concern is we need to consider, if we're going to do something, we need to do something with it as soon as possible, because it does provide, I would say, an unfair benefit, because the speed in which you can task force and drop something in the middle of a fight has been dropped by 80% in terms of time. So that needs to be looked at and allowed or implemented really quickly. And I think that's just a small thing. I'm not saying people are going to use it to cheese people, but I've noticed it increases the efficiency of how quickly you can get your best 3 merit crews alive into a mecha and down again. And apart from that, but I think they're great. I think everything should be added.
Yeah, we do. I mean, and, several people have messaged me asking like, "Hey, can you put out this code, or can I help with this, or can I help with that?" But the requests are usually for backend pieces, and the backend code is just I tried that in the open source era, and it really turned into me spending all my time doing code reviews for people, and then saying, well, you'd made this change here, but you didn't look like 100 lines above where it's actually doing this, so it's going to have all these extra side effects. I don't want / I don't think I can go back to that. But the flip side of that is, I think the front end is basically is wide open. And so like X Hunter kind of showed that there is a lot you can do just with the HTML to improve things. It wouldn't, if someone wants to start on a React app or some kind of rewrite, because really there are a lot of screens there, it should be one screen. Like the ability to modify a unit, put it in an army, stick it in storage, activate it, send it, how you organize your army and your forces, that really could just be one big cool screen of your army, and it's just got a lot of functionality in it, and that would probably replace a good 20% of the UI. So if anyone is really feeling like they want to do some development, I am all for someone trying to take a stab at a front end rewrite, or at least one major piece of functionality, because that's some of the oldest code in the game. And if it needs an API or something like that, and they show me like, hey, this is what I've got so far, because you could probably hack something together that's reading all the arrays that are already on the page. But it definitely needs an API at some point. Period. End of sentence.
I mean, I will continue to make these small neat features where and whenever I have the idea to do it. But yeah, having an API will definitely help. A lot of the things I want to do, but then it's kind of hard limited by what I can do with just simply rewriting the server requests, because if the server doesn't support the request that I want to do, it's gonna be very complicated.
Yeah, it's kind of looking at the utilities and then a couple of people asking about rewrites. That feels like the best direction, and so maybe at some point we open up discussion about a front end API that where you log in and then it gives you your units, your crews, all that stuff, and then you can just a standard REST format where you can interact with it.
I mean, if you can set up something like that, I would be very happy to contribute and work on that.
Cool. And maybe that's how we foray back into open source, is with a new project versus trying to work on 15-year-old code and me just getting really frustrated with it.
I mean, like opening up, like discussing one piece of things that I want to change, and then have an idea to do that, and then implementing it and making it modular. I love modularity. So if it's a small self-contained piece of file, then it will be really, really fun to work with.
Awesome. All right, looks like we're kind of near the end of this. Anybody have any other closing thoughts?
Yeah, sorry, Frizz. Just one small quality of life suggestion. Could we extend or remove the black market expiry date on posts? Just because with the game being a little bit quieter, 2 weeks usually it disappears, and a lot of people who are looking to trade and put on hundreds of thousands, if not millions of credit worth of units and mods, they kind of get taken down. Is there any way of extending that to maybe 4 to 6 weeks? I know you don't want to leave stagnant stuff on there, but I know that Shade specifically put on a load, and so did Gear, and then they disappear every 14 days. And for the sake of the amount of revenue that it drives, it's not worth the half an hour, because it's quite hard to do. It's quite time consuming. Is that an easy way for you to just flick that switch up, or is that quite a lot more work than intended?
I'm pretty sure I can just double that, and that would be a good starting point. Would that be a good? We'll double it and kind of take it from there.
Yeah, double's great. I think that's better than what we have. And then I think if it's not purchased within a month, then you might need to lower the price. So I think that's a good one.
Okay, and kind of looking back over chat, we'll go with, so the heavy ballistic turret's going to have a mag cannon. The heavy missile turret's going to have energy web missiles. Hasty construction is going to lose the minus speed and go to 0.85 CE from 0.9. And power plant restrictors are going also to 0.85 CE from 0.9. Let the SSM drop heavy missile. Why don't we? That feels like a future Code Jam discussion. Yeah, what that leaves out heavy energy turrets. Anyone have a? Oh, well, I mean, Leech has already kind of done acid for energy turrets. What's a good one for energy turrets? Rail. Ooh. Rail for energy? Are we all on board with that?
Yeah, why not? I think that's cool.
It would definitely add another element to base defense. And assaulting.
If we're going to be jumping into that, are we happy to just suggest, maybe within the next 24 hours, let's all have a look at human tech buildings and look at the HP of them, because 2 armor units can completely walk over, 1 energy unit can 1 turn a turret. So maybe if we are looking at changing that, can we just maybe look at increasing their stats to make them viable against Shack turrets?
I mean, I've always thought buildings in general, outside of support buildings, had incredibly low health. Only support buildings, which seems kind of like backwards to me.
Well, the drop pad, which is one of the most recent additions to the game, has nearly the same amount as a reactor, and a PDS is 200 for 200, whereas like a command tower is like 150. Obviously, I get the size of them, but a slab of concrete that has something drop on it versus
Well,
something
yeah,
else.
yeah, exactly. Like, what if a super power plant's got like what 100 health? Like, it's got nothing.
Yeah, I think Face Doge just got it. I think buildings is a great topic for next week. We'll finalize energy mods, and we can do a big pass on buildings next week.
That sounds
And
awesome.
I think that also we can even we need to look at energy requirements. We can look at health. We can just kind of there's a lot there, so we can do a nice big balance pass on that.
Yeah, yeah. The super power plant, our best one, has 200 health total, 100, 100. So, yeah, I think we should take a look at making buildings slightly better. Maybe support buildings weaker.
I'd love support buildings to have their own classification, so you can only drop a maximum of 4. So then there's strategy in, do I want a command tower, or do I want a thumper, or do I want a
3
tracking
thumpers.
station?
I would say
Yeah.
until I get check buildings back. Until I can harvest a dictator and a defense matrix. Screw you.
But yeah, classifying them could be cool, and then having a hard amount of power generation. But again, we can talk about this another time. But yeah, I think this could be a really cool way, because this then ties into, because a lot of the unit and mod changes are led towards PvP, and a lot of PvP is base attacks, and that is dictating. And 9 out of 10 people do not enjoy attacking a base, so making them that balance of making them unkillable versus useless is like, we need to play with that.
Agreed. We should probably get a Reddit thread and discuss how to balance that.
Right. Well, that's all I've got. I'm going to get the missile changes that we talked about last week into code. We've got the 5 updates that we did on the fly today around missile turrets, and the 2 simple mods that decrease CE. I'll post the energy mod changes that we'll be looking at this week, and the new overcharge mechanic. If everyone likes that, then that'll be our code for next week, and start thinking about base building balance.
Sounds good.
Great. Thanks for your time.
All right. Thanks, everybody. This was fun.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to have you here. So, I was informed that last week some people talked about the server, and oh yeah, hi, it's me who speaks. And they didn't like the fact that the server is administrated by a player who's inactive. So I wanted to discuss that, if you don't mind. So I am willing to make someone else an admin. I just don't know who, to put it simply.
And just thank you so much for having the server, I guess, to start. This was Code Jams wouldn't have started this quickly if we didn't have this Discord. So, to start with, a thank you for, providing this platform.
I'm glad to see that it's useful. Yeah, some people think I'm doing good, but I would like to have an extra admin, to be honest. So I was thinking maybe hold an elections where people fill in forms answering some questions, and I'll put the answers to the forms to everyone see, and then people will get to vote. Do you think that would be fine, or?
I think the mod
could be a little one-sided, but
yeah, I think.
Oh, you mean because of in-game politics?
Well, yeah. I think moderators are effectively what the moderators exist for that platform to kind of mediate the community and just keep that bubble. And I think moderators should be this should be an extension of the game without it being an extension. So I think maybe moderators just do that, and then once I know that the only active moderator religiously is left, so start with give everyone access, carb DJ everybody if they want to be active mods, and just kind of see that. Because I think if they can handle all chat, they can handle Discord. I know it's a little bit more relaxed, and the in-game domain of Frizz will do this if you do this, or not Frizz, but moderators will give you this, as long as everyone's aware of, you can't do the shit that's against the TOS in Discord, and there's no grey area, then yeah, for sure. I think mods can do their own job.
Is there new moderators in the game? Sorry if I'm a bit not up to date.
Rose, Cub, DJ, Dark Lab.
Yeah, there's no
totally PK.
Yeah, I did give Rose mod, but yeah, my philosophy was give people that have moderatorship in the game, moderatorship in the server as well. And yeah, then that sounds nice. I'll make everyone who's modding the game mod in the server as well.
I think that's a good start, and then maybe out
Yeah.
of them you could select another admin or co-admin later on down the line.
That sounds nice. Okay, so seems everyone here doesn't want another admin. That's cool. All right. So yeah, thanks for listening to me.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Aha.
All right, so wrapping up the co-jam. Anything else?
That covers it for me. Thanks everybody.
Take care, guys. See ya.
Everybody have a good day.